Hi, and welcome to Mrs. Jensen's Audiobooks. Today we're going to be reading part 3 of the Odyssey, Odysseus versus Sirens, the Scylla, and the Charybdis. And so if you remember from before break, where we pick up from our story, Odysseus has just returned from the land of the dead, where he received a warning from Tiresias, the blind prophet. Tiresias warns Odysseus that he and his crew will land on the island of the sun god, Helios, on their journey back to Ithaca. However, Odysseus and his men must not harm any of the cattle on the island. If any harm comes to the cattle, Helios will make Odysseus's journey home treacherous and kill all of his men at sea. Odysseus returns to Circe's island before setting off for home once more. Circe also gives Odysseus advice. On the journey home, he will first encounter Sirens. The Sirens are evil, mermaid-like creatures that lure men to their death with song. Next, Circe warns that in order to follow the passage home, Odysseus must make a choice. He must sail through the cave of the Scylla, a giant dragon monster with 6 heads. Circe describes, she has 12 feet, all deformed, 6 enormously long necks, with a horrific head on each of them, 3 rows of teeth packed close together, full of murky death. Scylla will kill 6 of Odysseus' men as they pass, eating each man with one of her 6 heads. Or Odysseus must sail by the Charybdis. The Charybdis is a giant whirlpool monster with teeth. It sucks ships to their destruction and devours the men inside of the ship. Circe explains, Charybdis sucks black, sweet seawater down. She spews it out 3 times a day, and then 3 times a day she gulps it down, a terrifying sight. May you never meet her when she swallows. Odysseus is faced with an impossible choice. Sacrifice 6 of his men to the Scylla or risk the lives of the entire crew against the Charybdis. Circe finished speaking. When dawn came upon her golden throne, the lovely goddess left to go up island. So I returned back to the ship, where I urged my comrades to get on board and loosen off the ropes. They quickly climbed into the ship, sat down in proper order at each rowing bench, and struck the gray sea surface with their oars, as fair winds blew behind our dark proud ship. Then the wind died down. Everything was calm, without a breeze. Some god had stilled the waves. My comrades stood up, furled the sail, and stowed it in the hollow ship, then sat at their oars, churning the water white with polished blades carved out of pine. With my sharp sword, I cut a large round chunk of wax into small bits, then kneaded them with my strong fingertips. Once I had plugged my comrades' ears with wax, they tied me hand and foot onto the ship. So I stood upright, hard against the mast. They lashed the rope ends to the mast as well, then sat and struck the gray sea with their oars. But when we were about as far away as a man shouts, moving forward quickly, our swift ship did not pass the Sirens. Once it came close, without being seen. So they began their clear-toned cry, Odysseus, you famous man, great glory of the Achaeans, come over here. Let your ship pause a while so you can hear the songs we two will sing. No man has ever rowed in his black ship past here without attending to our songs. Sweet-voiced melodies sung from our own lips. That brings him joy, and he departs here a wiser man, for we too understand all the misfortunes men endured at Troy. Hardships faced by Trojans and Achaeans, thanks to what the gods then willed, for we know all things that happen on this fertile earth. They paused. The voice that reached me was so fine my heart longed to listen. I told my crew to set me free, sending them clear signals with my eyebrows. But they fell to the oars and rowed ahead. Then 2 of them got up, Perimedes and Eurylochus, bound me with a rope and lashed me even tighter. When they'd rowed on well past the Sirens, my loyal crew quickly removed the wax I'd stuffed in each man's ears and loosened my ropes. But once we left the island far behind, I saw giant waves and smoke. Then I heard a crashing roar. The crew was terrified. I went through the ship, cheering up the men, standing beside each one, and speaking words of reassurance. Friends, up to this point, we have not been strangers to misfortune. Surely the bad things now are nothing worse than when the Cyclops, with his savage force, kept us prisoners in his hollow cave. But even here, thanks to my excellence, intelligence, and planning, we escaped. I think someday we'll be remembering these dangers too. But come now, all of us should follow what I say. Stay by your oars, keep striking them against the surging sea. Great Zeus may somehow let us all survive. I spoke. They quickly followed what I'd said. I did not mention Scylla, for she was a threat for which there was no remedy. In case, my comrades, overcome with fear, stopped rowing and huddled together inside the boat. So we kept moving, up the narrow strait, groaning as we went. On one side lay Scylla, on the other, divine Charybdis terrified us all by swallowing salt water from the sea. When she spewed it out, she seethed and bubbled uncontrollably, just like a cauldron on a huge fire, while high above our heads the spray rained down on top of both the cliffs. And when she sucked the salt seawater down, everything there looked totally confused. A dreadful roar arose in the rocks, and in the depths, the dark and sandy ground was plain to see. Pale fear gripped my comrades. When we saw Charybdis, we were afraid we'd be destroyed. Then Scylla snatched away 6 of my companions right from the deck, the strongest and the bravest men I had. I turned to watch the crew and the swift ship. Already I could see their hands and feet as Scylla carried them high overhead. They cried out and screamed, calling me by name one final time, their hearts in agony. Then, in the entrance to her cave, Scylla devoured the men. They still kept on screaming, stretching out their arms in my direction, and they met their painful deaths. Of all the things my eyes have witnessed in my journeying on pathways of the sea, the sight of them was the most piteous I have ever seen. Once we made it past those rocks and fled, escaping Scylla and dread Charybdis, we reached the lovely island of the god, home to those fine herds of broad-faced cattle and numerous rich flocks belonging to Helios Hyperon, god of the sun.